And welcome back. It's time for us to get up close and personal right here on K24 Alfajiri. I'm joined by a man whose passion for a sport brought him to Kenya around 37 odd years ago, and he's been here ever since. I'm talking about Mr. David Waters. Karibu sana.
Well,
Welcome to Alfajiri.
Thank you very much for having me.
And even before we talk about the passion of the sport that you have, which is cricket, yesterday's game, England-Croatia.
It was a fantastic game.
Man, absolutely.
Best team won.
Yeah?
It was a very hard-fought battle, but I thought Croatia deserved.
They fought, tooth and nail, blood, sweat and tears. Yeah. It was really one for the books.
It was a fantastic, it's been a fantastic tournament, actually. There have been some amazing games.
As you go into the final leg, who are you putting your money on? France, Croatia?
I think the problem will be that for Croatia is that they put so much into that game that they may well be tired, and the French have had another day or 2 days rest before the Croatians. So
which at that level is really significant. Just a day of rest could make a world of difference.
It'll be a good game, though.
Yeah? Okay, let's move away from that and just rewind the clock a bit. Okay. 37 years ago, it's 1981, and Mr. David Waters decides to come to Kenya. Yeah. What was the plan? What was going on here?
I came here as a schoolmaster. I had a 2-year contract at the Banda School on the Ongota Rangai Road. And my plan was not necessarily to only stay for 2 years, but the wonderful man that owned the school offered me an extension to my contract within 2 months of me being here, and I've never left.
And even as you came, because there's what you have in mind when you go to a foreign country, what you expect to find. Did it meet your expectations? Were you surprised at what you found once you go to Kenya?
In every respect, and still, it surpasses. It surpassed then, and it surpasses expectation now.
And even as you got into Banda School properly, you taught the children at that particular level. How did the cricket connection come to David? Had you always been playing cricket?
Yeah, indeed. My father introduced me to the game and played with me in the garden when I was a small boy. He played for a club called Sparsholt in Hampshire. I still play for that club whenever I go back to the UK on holiday. He's still alive, fortunately, and goes and watches them every week. And he gave me the passion,
And clearly it is indeed a family sport because your dad was playing, you're playing, your son plays as well. So it's passed from one generation to the next.
Indeed, and even my daughter at school, she played cricket at school. Sarah, and of course our son, played for Kenya in the World Cup in India and Sri Lanka in 2011, I think it was.
And let's talk about that briefly, because Kenya has had its fair share of glory when it comes to the World Cup. We can't forget, I think it was in 1996, when Kenya beat West Indies at that particular time, and the guys were absolutely beside themselves. Crazy game. But after that, we didn't quite get our footing, and because from that point, people are actually watching Kenya, and something kind of changed. What's changed as far as the team dynamic is concerned?
That victory over the West Indies was the start of a meteoric rise. And we then made, if you remember, we made the semi-finals of the World Cup, having beaten 3 test sides along the way, and people were talking about us as being the next test nation. If your question is why are we where we're at now, it's a very straightforward answer. Those wonderful years were all on the back of a group of incredibly talented Kenyans that all peaked at the same time. And most of them were about the same age. We have a very small pool of players in Kenya. Actually, when I came, we only had about 50 cricket teams playing league cricket over the whole country. And today, it's almost the same. So when the selectors sit down to pick up a team for Kenya, and I was chairman of the selection committee for a while, we only have about 550 people to choose from. Well, you compare that to even a school in South Africa or in England. They have 550 kids that play cricket. So those men that performed for Kenya, they peaked at the same time. They were world-class players, and they achieved what they did. But the issue was there was no development program for young kids underneath the surface of the national team then, nor now. It's starting to change a bit now. And this isn't peculiar just to cricket. This is rugby, this is hockey, this is swimming, whatever sport. If you don't encourage kids and have a structured development program at regional, area, then national level, your good sides, once they retire, we all get old and we all stop playing. If you've got no one to follow them, you're in trouble. And that actually is, I think, historically where we're at the moment.
And then even when you look at it, because like you said, it's not new to cricket. Very many sports suffering the same problem in the sense that you have a very good crop of players who are currently in the league doing very well. But when you look a couple of years down the line, once they've retired, there's no one who'll pick up the baton from where they left and move forward. How can we change that? Because especially when you talk about cricket, when you look at it, it's not as popular in Kenya as probably other sports. When you compare soccer, World Cup, everyone plays soccer at one point or another. How do we change that narrative and spread this particular sport and get even more talent into this particular pool?
Okay, I mean, actually your question is a really good one because it actually addresses some of the issues around the sport itself. And the sport itself requires quite a bit of structure, and it also requires a bit of resource. You need equipment. In order to play football, in some of the schools that the project that I'm running in Nairobi, in some of the schools that we work in, the kids get a few plastic bags, although they've been banned now, tie a bit of string around them, and they can have a game of football.
Right.
You can't really do that with cricket. Although if you ask the Tikalos and the Adumbes, and even some of the current Kenyan players, how they learnt the game, they first played, they saw people playing at Sir Ali Muslim Club in Park Road. This is going back into the 70s. They went through the hedge and saw what was happening, saw the game and wanted to emulate it. So they went out home and they used maize cobs and they used bats that they'd made out of wood. So it is possible to improvise, but you need equipment, you need structure, you need organization, you need people who understand the game to coach it. And all of those things take time and they take money. You've got to have resources. And that is one of the things that's holding, I think, cricket back in Kenya. The other thing is that it needs to be introduced into the school program. And that's something that one or two organizations and people, and certainly the one that I'm involved in, that's what we are doing. Although it's not the only reason we're actually teaching cricket. We're trying to use cricket as a means to promote character in kids.
Right.
But the game itself is desperate in Kenya for the national body and the provincial bodies to invest in junior development programs with people who have the responsibility for running them, who are accountable. They must start small and they must grow slowly.
Right.
And then they can manage the growth. This is only my own opinion, but of course.
And even as you talk about that, there's also a certain narrative that comes with the sport of cricket, that there are only a few select countries that will always be good at cricket. They've been good at cricket for ages. It never changes. When you're watching any cricket match, you'll see, the West Indies playing Pakistan, South Africa, New Zealand. And it never changes. You'll never see a country out of the woodworks and be like, wow, we've never thought these guys could play that well. What usually happens, even at that international level, that we have a select few countries that are always performing at that level.
I suppose it's part of the culture of the sport is part of the culture in some of those countries. I mean, cricket in Asia, the countries like India, it's almost like a religion. You've got 1 billion people, and when India are playing, for example, if they played Pakistan, literally 1 billion people would turn on the television to watch the game. So it's part of the culture. But there are some sides, countries that are emerging. Afghanistan is a good example. I mean, 10 years ago, they almost didn't exist as a cricket team. Now, they are way ahead of Kenya, and they're knocking on the door of being the next test nation. And even countries in the Middle East, countries like Oman, they've now got cricket sides that are climbing up the leagues. I think in a way, if you look at other sports, if you ask the same question and said, let's talk about rugby, in a way it would almost be the same. The sides at the top of the pile, the New Zealands, the Australians, the English, or whatever, they have been there for a long time. In rugby, they have been in cricket as well. So it's difficult to climb out of where you are.
Right.
It's not easy, yeah.
And even as we talk about, at that particular level and some of those countries and the heroes that they have, they're really, they're almost demigods when you talk about Sachin Tendulkar in, India, Shane Warne in Australia. These are big names, and you talk about them in the country, everybody knows about it.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
When you come to Kenya, we have the Maurice Odumbes, the Tikolos, but from there, do you feel like they get as much praise as they should get? And is their story, in the public eye as it should, so that we know that these are our heroes? And for someone who's coming up, they can also seek to emulate another Odumbe story and be the next Odumbe? Do we do enough of that?
No, we don't. As a country, Kenya, we definitely don't. And let's not just talk about cricket. Let's talk about, I mean, athletics and our athletes. They are the ones that basically, the Kenyan athletes are the ones that are the best sort of PR for Kenya in the whole world. We've got the best runners. Everyone loves Kenyan runners. They win the marathons. Wherever they are, wonderful. But if they walk down the street, people don't recognize them. And in the newspapers, apart from the back page, which is sport, they don't get the national coverage and the media attention and the public attention in a way that they should when they do well. Obviously, cricket being a minor sport, that's compounded a bit. Yeah.
And we're talking about it from an international perspective, a national perspective, but you decided to take this upon yourself personally and do something about it, change the narrative, change what's happened to the sport in Kenya. Let's talk about that particular initiative and how you decided, you know what, I'm going to take this upon myself as a challenge to try and change what's going on. How did you start doing that and reaching out to try and influence more children with this sport?
Well, that goes back a very long way, actually, because I've been involved in a sort of, if you like, a junior development program based around the club that I play cricket for at Nairobi Club and Kenya Kongoni's Cricket Club. And I suppose it's over 25 years ago, when my own son was about 4 or 5 years old, and obviously introducing the game of cricket to him. And we would go down and he would come with me and watch me play cricket for Gymkhana and watch me play cricket and practice with us as a little boy. We'd help him along. And it just struck me at the time that I'm sure there are an awful lot of Kenyans, because we were one of the biggest rivalries that my club, I used to play league cricket for Nairobi Gymkhana, was with Swami Bapa. And it just struck me there must be so many Kenyan kids out there that, given an opportunity, would have the same skill levels as the Tikolos and the Odumbes and the wonderful players, the Apondos and the Arewas that used to play for the Swami Bapa in the 80s. So I sort of, with one or two other people, we put a little development program together based around Nairobi Club, and I would go in my pickup, I had a Datsun pickup, down to near Gymkhana on a Friday evening, fill it with kids that wanted to come, drive them back to Nairobi Club. We'd teach them how to play cricket, and then I'd drop them back again. And to cut a long story short, that was the start of something that then has now, sort of 25, 30 years later, has obviously grown and has brought on some cricket. The idea wasn't actually to produce international cricketers, but several of those kids that we introduced as 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds ended up playing for Kenya in the future. And even now, people like Alex Abanda and Elijah Otieno, who are in the current Kenyan squad, they actually learnt their cricket at Kongoni's when they were 5 or 6 years old.
And you've literally seen them grow up in the sport and seen the development of their talents.
Yes, indeed, yeah.
And for you at the time, were you still teaching? Had you?
Yeah, no, indeed, and I did that for 10 years, from 1980-81 to 1990-91, and then I moved on and set up a pre-university school and a school for kids with special learning needs. Amongst other things, but I always retained an interest in education and continued all through that period with junior development. And at the time I was also involved with the Nairobi Provincial Cricket Association. I was the secretary of that, a selector for Kenya. So I was very much involved in the sort of Kenyan cricket scene.
And even at that time, I'm sure just looking at what was going on at that particular moment in terms of the sport and the passion that you had for it and what you wanted to do, it almost seemed like, a really big task, Herculean task for you to try and get these boys, change the whole narrative of it being for a select few. And for most people, when the task looks too big, they just shove it to the side, and that's for someone else to deal with. I have my own team here, I'll take care of these kids, do what I can do. I have a business that I've just started and I'm running. I don't have enough hours in my day. I have a family as well. What made you decide, you know what, I'll pick this one as well and I'll take it as far as I can?
I think one of the keys is you've got to have ambition and you've got to have a target. If you have too big an ambition and too big a target at the start, it's almost unattainable. And so one of the things that I sort of always concentrated on was trying to do well with a smaller group of people and let that group evolve slowly, rather than try and approach hundreds of people. If you haven't got the foundation in place, then it doesn't work. and in the sort of journey of what we're now doing with the charity that I'm involved in running as project manager, which is actually a UK-based charity. And the gentleman that put all this together is a remarkable individual and a real inspiration. So his name's Derek Breed, and he lived in Kenya pre-colonial times. Sorry, during colonial times. He was a policeman. He contracted polio as a youngster, but came back from that and eventually captained Kenya at cricket in the 1960s. A remarkable physical, challenge, and then became a very successful businessman with a passion for Kenya and a passion for cricket. So that was the two sort of common denominators. And he was patron of Kenya Kongoni's Cricket Club, very senior man in our club. And he saw the development program that we'd put together in Nairobi, that I was running in Nairobi, just as an amateur thing, just to try and introduce kids to cricket. And he took me aside one day and said, listen, what would you say if we turn this into a proper, professionally run charity and scaled up what you are doing in Kenya with a small group of kids to see if we can broaden the reach? This initially was just for cricket. Very soon we both realized, because I almost bit his arm off and said, yeah, this is a wonderful idea. And there's another group of guys in the UK that are members of Kenya Kongoni's Cricket Club that have Kenya and cricket as a common denominator.
Right.
Small group of guys. They became the trustees. To cut a long story short, the charity was indeed formed in England. It's called the East Africa Character Development Trust. And in Kenya, we formed a charitable trust called the Foundation for Youth Cricket and Education in Kenya Charitable Trust. Quite a long title. And so that was the beginning of the journey. We now employ 15 full-time Kenyan men and women who are trained character educators and qualified cricket coaches. And again, many of those were in the program that I started when they were 5 or 6 or 7 years old.
They jumped into the back of the pickup.
So, yeah, and they are now working. We work in 17 schools in underprivileged areas, mainly slum schools, I think it would be fair to say. If you ask the head teachers of some of the schools, that's how they describe themselves, as a slum school. And we work with up to 4,000, sometimes over 4,500 boys and girls on a weekly basis during PE lessons, teaching character development through sport. And the sport that we've chosen is cricket. Because we realize that the mechanism and the using sport, not just for sport itself, but we could influence kids in a positive way so that they could then contribute to the society, both, let's say, in the school, in the classroom, in their family, in their community, and then most importantly, eventually in the workplace. So what we're hoping to do eventually is to give kids a better chance of becoming employable. And a lot of the people that are supporting our work, commercial people, are telling us what they look for in a future employee. The education system, not just in this country, incidentally, this is something that employers all over the world say, that the education system isn't fit for purpose. It isn't turning out kids that think out of the box. So what we're trying to do is give kids the character traits that make them employable. So if they were sitting in front of you and me and we were interviewing them,
right,
that kid that has come through the Foundation for Youth Cricket and Education's program would have something about him or her that you think, now wait a minute, this is the sort of person I want to work for me.
Okay, and let's talk about the foundation and, of course, the schools that are in the program. What's the criteria in terms of choice of school that will be part of this particular program? Because when you look at either Mathare, Kibera, there's so many schools, hundreds of schools. So how do you decide we're going to take school A and probably wait for school B in the next phase? How does that work?
Okay, I think it goes in a way, it goes back to something that we were discussing before. So starting small. So when I started going out to knock on the doors of the head teachers to tell them about, at that point, 4 years ago, this was just a dream. So these guys had a leap of faith, actually. So I would go along and explain what we were trying to achieve and say, it won't cost you anything. We will provide the teachers, the equipment, the educators. All you have to do is open your door, and we will hopefully provide something positive for your kids. And so we knocked on a few doors, and almost, well, every door. There wasn't a single door where the head teacher said, well, I'm not interested.
Right.
Because they all realized that some of the classes, the schools that we work in, they have classes of 100 children. They have no PE or sports equipment, and they don't really have the teachers that are trained actually to be able to deliver the PE program in the right way.
Right.
So if someone like our organization comes along and offers those schools equipment and coaching and teaching on a regular basis, not one-off, this isn't 1 week, you won't see us again. We're there every week of the academic year, and then next year, and then next year. So all of these head teachers said, this is wonderful, yes please. Maybe you should interview one of them one day to make sure that what I'm telling you is true.
And even as you do that, is there some form of report that one of your instructors will go with and probably tell the head teacher that Jeff started off as a shy individual, but now this is a change we're seeing in his character? Or how does it work that by the end of a certain period, you can tell what has happened with a particular student?
I mean, indeed. So we collect daily data, which is each of the hubs. We work in different hubs, which is a cluster of schools. Each of the hub leaders, the coach, has a tablet. We formulated a program which records the detail of the number of hours, the number of minutes, the character trait of each lesson that we teach, as well as the cricket, and records of the kids. But very interesting, it's not necessary for us to actually go to the head teachers and say, this child or that child is changing. The head teachers and the teachers that we deal with on a daily basis are actually coming to us and saying, we are noticing the change in this child or that child. There's one particular, there are hundreds of examples, but I could like to, if you wouldn't mind, I'll give you a couple. There's one particular boy in a school called Kibiro Primary School and Kibiro Secondary School, which is in Kawangware. This boy almost never used to go to school. He was a serial absentee. Well, he's completely changed his character and now never misses a day's school because he's so involved and thoroughly involved in the program. And now he's knocking on the door of playing league cricket in Kenya.
Right.
There's a girl called Alice. When she was 11, I was at the first lesson that we taught at Kawangware Primary School. And this kid was in the class. And one of the coaches, it was Dollar. Dollar asked the kids, there were about 100 kids, how many of you have heard of cricket? And not one of them put up their hand. They thought it was an insect. 3.5, she's 14 now. She has already played cricket for the full Kenya ladies national team in South Africa, Rwanda. She's traveling the world. She's playing international cricket. So it just shows you the talent that is there, the character that this kid and all her other classmates must have to have achieved that in a short space of time. So the teachers themselves are the ones that are saying to us, we can see the difference in the characters of these children.
Right.
They're working harder in the classroom, they're running around more, they're physically fitter, they've got more of a focus in their life, and they are changed for the better. So actually, that's music to our ears, really.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And even as we come to a close on this particular interview, like you said, at the beginning of this program, it was just a dream. You didn't know how far it would go, but you had a passion and a desire to do something. You started knocking on doors. Now that we're here, when you look forward, where do you see the program going to next? What do you have in mind?
Okay.
Where do you see it going?
Well, a very simple answer. We would love to expand. But going back to the problems of facing all sports, it's all about resources, and this costs money. You have 15 full-time employees, you need equipment, all of the things that you need to run. It's almost like a business. I think if you run a charity properly, it's got to be run professionally. So our challenge is finance. We need corporate donors in Kenya. We've got 2 already. Senior Feeds have come on board with us and are fully sponsoring a hub, and Tatu City are fully sponsoring a hub. But just to contribute to the existing program, we need 4 more. The only restriction on our ambition is finance. If we could get the support that we need, we would expand this program beyond Nairobi into other areas of Kenya and then ultimately in other areas of East Africa.
Okay. And at that particular point, we'll leave it at that. If somebody wanted to get in touch with you, probably in order for their school to be part of the program, or probably come in terms of finance, where can they reach you? What are the contacts they can use?
I can give you a mobile number or our website.
On the website?
Yeah, eacdt.org is the website. My mobile number, anyone who wants to contact me or is interested in what we're doing, 0733 640 668.
Again, the website eacdt.org.
Actually, I can't actually tell you the website off the top of it unless I look at a card with the website on it.
Okay, no problem. And of course, we'll also go ahead and post it on our social media.
Would you mind doing that? Yes,
we'll
I'm sorry. I don't want to give you the wrong website
No problem.
address.
And of course, I can get in touch with you right there. Okay, thank you so much, David.
Real pleasure. No, thank you so much for giving us the opportunity.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. Of course, David Waters, a passion for cricket and a passion for changing children's lives. That's really what it's all about, and he's doing his part. We'll give you all the details right here, of course, on Alfajiri. But also, let's move on to the roads, because every single morning, like clockwork at this time, you know what's going to be happening. Don't be surprised. The traffic is absolutely horrendous, but at least Shiro has usually a route or two you could use to alleviate that whole road rage that you might face. Where can guys use this time, Shiro?
Let's keep hope alive, because now that we're smack in the middle of rush hour, we are absolutely chaotic on the roads. Let's start off looking at Mombasa Road really quickly. Mombasa Road traffic is actually stretching all the way up to the South End Bypass and up to the Nyayo Stadium roundabout. Traffic at a near standstill, not even moving much really. And if your plan is to say, you know what, I don't want to deal with Mombasa Road this morning, let me go into South Sea, that would not be a great idea, because Moho Avenue all the way up to Nairobi West is really packed. Mai Mahiu Road also up until T-Mall is quite busy as well. So no hope in sight for you, I'm afraid. Langata Road is not looking as bad as it was yesterday. Traffic starts from Sunshine Secondary School and heads up until T-Mall. Mbagathi Way, however, is a complete disaster. Traffic stretching all the way from the T-Mall roundabout up until the City Mortuary roundabout. All right, let's take a quick look at Ngong Road, see what that is looking like this morning. Ngong Road, the traffic is actually stretching all the way from the Lenana area past the junction, and of course eases up past Prestige Plaza as we head into the City Mortuary roundabout. Okay, let's look at Wayaki Way really quickly, see what that situation looks like. Wayaki Way is very busy all the way from the ABC Place down into Westlands. Finally, let's look at Thika Road. Thika Road is horrendous. Oh my gosh, Thika Road is so bad, starting all the way from Allsops and down into the Pangani area. Let's take a look at some of your tweets, see what that situation looks like on Twitter. Let's see. Current situation at Haile Selassie. I don't know if we can just zoom in just a bit so we can actually see what that current situation looks like. Wow. Current situation at Haile Selassie Avenue as police battle Wakulima Market Marikiti traders over the arrest of their chairman. So, of course, as a result, the traffic at Muthurwa is absolutely horrible. All right, let's look at the next tweet there. Marikiti Market is closed. It's a running battle between traders and Askaris. Wow, as you can see there, things are looking quite chaotic on that front. Wayaki Way is super clear. Muthaiga to town took me an impressive 30 minutes at this hour. Let's just see why that is. Finally, Langata Road is traffic stuck right now, not moving at all. All right, that is your traffic situation as at 7:08. On the side of the break, we talk about finding forgiveness after infidelity. Let me see if I can learn a few things from this discussion with Sarah Tessner. Don't go anywhere.